safe within the harmony of kin.
Welcome back to Reality Asserts Itself on the Real News Network, and we're continuing our discussion with singer, songwriter, virtuoso guitarist Bruce Cockburn. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you.
The way you're framing the question, and two things. One, we're all complicit. This is all like, this is kind of human. That it implies that this is just all about human nature in the end. It's kind of a moral, if you want, religious question, good and evil in a sense, rather than human society has evolved in a way that there are different classes. There's this elite that owns the vast majority of the wealth. Because of that ownership and concentrated ownership, they have political power. And the democracy, well, we get to talk like this and we don't get arrested. And I'm not minimizing how important that is compared to some places.
Or how precarious it is.
Or how precarious it is. It's still a bit of a facade because you get to choose which section of the elites get to rule, actually quoting right-wing pundit George Will, who actually said that. And if we're going to confront this challenge of climate change, does there not have to be a real fundamental change in how stuff is owned and who has political power and what real democracy looks like? And I think sometimes when you frame it just in terms of human nature, if you will, it detaches from what needs to be done.
It's a complicated picture, and I think the same pitfall lies in the other direction as well. That if you only look at the political, you leave out a big chunk of the motivation behind all of that, and you run into the same dead end. That we have to look at who we are and how we do things. Of course, how we do things is critical. Allowing the people with the most money to make all the decisions is a bad idea.
Spend a buck to make a buck. You don't really give a flying about the people in misery.
It was a bad idea when the United States was founded, and the founders of the United States recognized that and tried to prevent it, tried to set it up. I mean, they had their own idea of who counted and who didn't, of course, but
a big part of it.
They were
defense
also
of slavery.
Well, yeah, exactly. But they left out a big chunk of the people. I mean, it's been said that democracy, including the original Greek democracies, can only exist if there's the equivalent of a slave population. I mean, right now we don't have overtly a slave population, but we have the whole third world that feeds us, that looks out for us and doesn't get paid, basically. So, I mean, it's as if it were that. And without that, democracy itself doesn't flourish. I hope that's wrong, but history would suggest that it isn't. So what, that invites us to look at least at the kind of democracy that we have.
When they call it democracy, when they call it democracy.
At the assumptions about it. Right now, democracy is not very popular. It's not even popular with the people who are benefiting most from it, the voters, who don't vote, don't bother exercising their democratic
they
rights.
don't really benefit from it because they wind up electing one, whether it's corporate Democrats or right-wing Republicans.
Don't benefit is relative.
Life
though.
doesn't get better.
You're right. People, we can see in what ways we're deprived. But if you think that the amount of democracy we have doesn't count, look at places that don't have it at all and see how you feel about that. Because the little bit of democracy that we do have, the flawed way in which it actually does work, still allows us a vast amount of greater amount of freedom than any other system.
But if you put this all down to human frailty, there's no way out.
Well, yeah, we have to We have to continue the work, let's say, let's put it in these terms, continue the work of the founding fathers of the United States. And they tried to legislate, or try to create a legal framework that would accommodate the frailty of human nature and prevent the worst excesses of that frailty. And that work is unfinished because humanity is unfinished so far, and human nature is always going to be what it is. So you got to always, and new technology gives us new opportunities to do both good and bad things. Somebody has to figure all this out, which means we have to figure all this out. The people who are qualified among us, the intellectually qualified.
It's either paid off local bottom feeders, passing themselves off as leaders. Kiss the ladies, shake hands with the fellas, and it's open for business like a cheap bordello, and they call it democracy.
You said in the book, and I'm rushing you because we're running out of space here, you wanted to really put your energy and focus into people that are trying to deal with this coming, I assume you're talking mostly climate.
Well, that's where the biggest threat is. The most immediate, obvious threat is that. But before we get to that, I mean, there's one of the ways in which our attempts to address, I think, there is a cause and effect here. I'm not sure if it's intentional or not yet, but there's this tilt toward totalitarianism that is definitely a block against addressing climate change.
Fascism dominates the scene. When the ends don't meet, it's easier to justify the means. Tenants get the dregs and the landlords get the cream.
And if we let that go, then we're not going to be able to do anything. So you can't address climate change without also looking at the degree to which our democracy, flawed as it is under threat. So, you know, and it's all chicken and egg, it's the whole thing. So human nature is what it is, the world is what it is, you know, geological changes occur over vast, long periods, and, you know, all these things, the human pendulum swings back and forth constantly between freedom and lack of and other kinds of things, but taking all that into account, like, what do you do about it? Well, we got to work on it. We got to talk to each other. We got to figure out how not to be divided by morons, and to actually have valuable or meaningful conversations about this stuff and act on those conversations.
As the grinding devolution of the democratic dream brings us men in gas masks dancing while the shells burst. The trouble with normal is it always gets worse.
We have to reinforce the work of the people who are trying to act on those things. You know, the scientific whistleblowers who are saying, look, if you don't wake up, if we don't change this is going to happen. Well, you know, nobody knows. They're not necessarily prophets, so their description of what will happen, you have to take with a grain of salt. But something's going to happen, and we're probably not going to like it. So let's get on it.
All right, cool. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Reality Asserts Itself.
Sunset is an angel weeping, holding out a bloody sword. No matter how I squint, I cannot make out what it's pointing toward. Sometimes you feel like you've lived too long. Days drip slowly on the page. You catch yourself pacing the cage.